Hi, welcome to Just Common Sense. My name's Brian Harrison. So, guys, I've got a new guest on tonight, which is Greg, and I've also got the award-winning, everybody loves him, Jerry. He's online with us tonight. The audience is giving their applause for everybody. Awesome. Congratulations. They actually like you guys. So, we're going to talk about a couple things tonight. We're going to talk about what's going on with the House. I'll say it's actually a mess up there right now in many ways. This should have been done day one. They should not have said, we're going to take the weekend off because we don't want anybody's feelings hurt. Give me a break. Do your job and stay in there until you get a House Speaker. That's my opinion on it. So we can go into what happened today. Obviously, they thought they had another Speaker of the House. It did not happen. I'll say it. I was rooting for I was actually rooting for Jim Jordan, and it didn't happen. And God knows, I hope he jumps back in. I don't know if it's going to happen. We'll just have to see what happens next. But there's been people talking about Trump being a House Speaker, but I don't think that's going to happen. He's got too much on his plate right now. And he wants
that would be
president.
entertaining, but it's highly unlikely.
Yeah, highly unlikely. All right, guys, let's start out with Jerry. What do you want to say? Because we talked about Matt Gaetz earlier doing this. I was for this because I'm going to say one thing. I'm for it because, you know, when Kevin McCarthy was in there, he wasn't doing his job. And I heard many things from people, friends and coworkers and stuff saying, hey, you know what? The Republican Party is just stagnant. They're not doing anything. Finally, somebody shakes up the party and everybody's going, whoa, wait a minute. Now we're really upset because, you know, somebody finally stepped out and did something. I'm not saying, you know, everybody's saying he didn't have a plan. Well, what plan could he have? That's my question, because the next thing is to pick a House Speaker. That's the whole thing. And we all thought it was going to be, you know, Jordan, but it didn't happen. But anyway, guys, go ahead. What do you think, Jerry?
Well, frankly, I wanted Jim Jordan back in January. And I know you and I have discussed this, that the reason that McCarthy got the speakership is he put in the work. He went out and raised money for the party. He helped people in some smaller elections get elected, and he did put in the work. I'll give him that. I give him that credit. I have never thought he would be an effective speaker, but I knew he would be better than, Paul Ryan or John Boehner or, any of those guys that we had before. With that being said, when things went crazy in January where he had to get like 15 votes to get the speakership, the whole reason behind that was not that people said, hey, we won't let him be speaker. It was just they wanted to make sure that if he was, there were certain guarantees that he would do his job. And he made, and I forget the number of things that he said he'd do. It was like 5 or 7 or something like that. And the other day when I saw Matt Gaetz being interviewed, shortly after the vacation of the speaker's position, he listed off the things that McCarthy had promised he would do that he had not done. And one of them was the whole thing about continuing resolutions in lieu of a budget, but also Hunter Biden investigation, things like that. So, I understand it's controversial that they have gone and had the speaker removed. But one of the things that I believe is that it's not only long overdue, I'm just shocked that this is the first time in my lifetime that it's happened, because we've had ineffective speakers before. I'm just kind of surprised it's the first time it's happened. And, as far as not having a plan, well, you know what? Sometimes, no plan is the best plan because it makes you think on your feet, and then you get the actual, what needs to happen. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah. And what's your thoughts, Greg?
Well, right now we have a ship that doesn't have a rudder. It doesn't appear to have a definite course, and that's a problem with any leadership position. I'd like to disagree with you on Jim Jordan, but honestly, I thought he was the best choice as well, because he's one of the brightest, one of the most energetic, and one of the most competitive guys out there in the Republican Party. And I thought he would have done a great job. But right now, we have different people pushing for different things. And maybe they haven't done the math, but the math is going to require some unity. And
Absolutely.
I thought, last night when they met behind closed doors and they supposedly had a pledge of unity, I really was optimistic that something positive would get done today, and it blew up again. So to me, this is somewhat of a black eye for the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope it doesn't hurt their chances come next year during elections.
Well, yeah, and Jerry and I've talked about this before because I think them sitting on this the way they did, and we're worried about them losing the House. I think part of the concern that Jerry and I've spoken with in the past is something needed to be done. We were talking about them going for the impeachment of Joe Biden. Well, it took a long time to even get to the inquiry of it. But my thing with this is, why did it take so long when they had so much evidence? And
clearly,
yeah,
if there was ever a case for impeachment, there's certainly enough things out there to impeach him.
Right.
Oh, the border, the pay for play, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And the Senate would probably stop it anyway. I mean, the Democrats are going to stop that, and that's fine.
Well,
but
sure they would.
What's going to happen is at least it looks like the House, the Republicans in the House are trying to do something and move forward with it, and everybody's going to look at that and say, guess what? You guys at least tried to do your job. Everything went through. I mean, yeah, we know you didn't get him fully impeached because the full impeachment has to go through the Senate. I love how the Democrats are saying, we impeached Trump. Well, a full impeachment, in my opinion, is when it fully goes through and you're gone. But that's a full impeachment. But that being said, that if this would have happened, at least they would have said, well, the Republicans actually tried. And we know it got stopped, but at least we'll vote for them next time. Now, all of a sudden, it looks like a clown show up there because of what's going on. And that's going to affect them, I'm afraid, when they vote for the House and Senate next time. And that's going to be a problem, perhaps. That's going to be something that's going to weigh in on them.
They deserve the ridicule that they're most likely to get. And that's a shame. You mentioned Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Matt Gaetz.
Okay.
He represents a very important state in the state of Florida, but he does a good job of tearing things down, but he doesn't do a great job of building things back. And that's what's missing right now.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Sounds like a younger version of Lindsey Graham.
Yeah. And I hear this from a lot of people. He did it without a plan. What would the plan be? Do you have an idea what a plan would be if you were Gaetz? What would you have done? Any ideas, guys?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I certainly would have pushed for my own candidate. If I was going to, take somebody out, I would be pushing for my own candidate, but he hasn't really appeared to be doing that.
Well, I think one of the things that Gaetz' plan was, I think his plan was to get rid of McCarthy as Speaker.
Yeah.
But I think he was hesitant to come too hard to the table with a candidate of his choice, because then it makes it sound like that's the only reason you were doing it. And so I think he was trying to say, hey, look, I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to elect a new speaker. And I personally think that even though he hasn't come public with it, I think Gaetz' plan was Jim Jordan. And, I think that's where he's coming from. But I think that he wanted to be too cautious about coming out too strong and having people say, oh, you had an alternative motive. You had an agenda. His whole agenda was, hey, back in January, the reason they argued until they finally, gave in and allowed McCarthy to get the speaker was they said, hey, look, we want to be able to remove you if you're not doing your job. And so when they finally agreed to that, okay, you know what, if we don't do our job, one person can vote to vacate, which, had not been done before. So, with Gaetz, I think that his plan was, A, to get McCarthy out. I think if you were to get him, behind closed doors and get him to admit it, that his plan was Jim Jordan. But I think he wanted to just be careful that he didn't come across as the kingmaker, because that could, splatter back.
A couple of days after that, he was saying Jim Jordan.
Correct. But I think that he didn't want to say it in the same breath and come out and say, hey, I want to get rid of McCarthy because I want Jim Jordan.
Go ahead,
As a matter of fact, if he had done that, they might not have got the votes to impeach or to remove McCarthy.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to buy into that, but the way Matt Gaetz seemed to enjoy the spotlight and seemed to enjoy his 15 minutes of fame, it makes me question that.
Well, I think he's getting more spotlight by doing it the way that he did it, because if he had just come out, then a lot of people might have just shut him down. But so now people are coming back. Hey, now that you've done this, it's almost like at the end of the World Series, the Super Bowl or whatever, and they go to the MVP and hey, what are you going to do now? I'm going to Disney World. I'm half expecting to see Matt Gaetz have a commercial with that.
Oh, I can tell you, they were
Matt Gaetz. You just removed McCarthy as Speaker of the House. What are you going to do now? I'm going to Disney World.
Really? No, but I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene has been speaking of Jordan the whole time. She was excited. Now, with this other guy today, of course, Jerry actually had a point, which I didn't even know, and found out that this guy was for the popular vote. So that would
he wanted to get rid of the Electoral College, and that to me is a non-starter.
Right.
Yeah, that's a real problem right there.
Yeah, and this is a real problem. I mean,
the Electoral College was put there for a very specific purpose to represent the smaller states in addition to the larger states.
Correct. It's a protection, not some sort of backdoor to something. It's a protection for smaller states to not feel that they're being neglected or abused.
Right.
Yep. System of checks and balances.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll find out. They're back to the drawing board, but I hope they're going to stay at work and do their job and quit postponing this forever, because that's one of the problems. And who knows? I keep hoping maybe Jordan will jump back into it. You never know. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I doubt it. But we'll see. And
I would like that, but I think that the thing that would make this clown show really, like, you guys are concerned about, the feedback that's going to happen.
I know where you're going.
And they've got a year to overcome any negative, consequences of this, as long as they actually accomplish something once the speaker's chosen. Mm-hmm. But if you want to see the Republicans not recover from this, let McCarthy be reinstalled as speaker. They will never recover from that.
No.
Right. Or, another option that I thought of is maybe the representative from North Carolina, McHenry.
Goodness.
I like what he did right off the bat in terms of kicking Nancy Pelosi out of her office.
That's about the only thing I like that he's done. Yeah. But other than that, he's been a petulant, childlike, Les Nessman lookalike.
Actually funny.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw his quilted vest that he wore underneath his sport coat the other day.
I did not see that.
That was not the best fashion look I've ever seen.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not a fan of that, but we got to vote for a House Speaker. And I mean, that's basically it. It goes back to that.
But, who are they going to choose at this point? If you can't elect Jim Jordan, if you can't elect Steve Scalise?
Yeah, between Scalise and Jordan, if you don't get one of those guys, come on, really, who's better qualified?
That's the problem. I agree. And that's the problem. So I don't know what they're going to do. They're back to the drawing board. You should have seen Marjorie Taylor Greene today. She was all upset when they were going for this guy, and all of a sudden he dropped out, and there she's now celebrating. Great. Now we got to get somebody in there again. But
part of the problem is they should have done everything they're doing now behind closed doors.
Right.
It should have. Should have never been played out on the House floor. This should have been something that, hey, you know what? We're going to just tell the American people, hey, guys, you know what? We don't have our guy yet. Yep. And it's like, once we have our guy, then, we're going to go ahead and bring it to the House floor. But, we don't have our guy yet. And they should have just told the Republicans, hey, nobody's going to get any political mileage out of this. Nobody's going to get any press mileage out of this. This is going to be behind closed doors. And, once we choose a guy, then we're going to war with him.
Yeah, what's the old saying about the making of sausage?
Yep. Nobody wants to see how the sausage is made.
You would never eat it.
Yeah, really. Oh, geez. Hey, Greg, you brought up something today. You were talking about, I'm just curious, you were talking about Colorado and them taking Trump off the ballot. Now,
Yeah.
did I understand you correctly saying that was 100% done, or is there's a lawsuit, my understanding, that they're just trying to get him off the ballot? Because,
Well, Trump and his attorneys have tried to block that lawsuit several times, and they've been unsuccessful. A Colorado judge has allowed them to move forward in terms of blocking Trump from the ballot on the grounds of insurrection. And that being in the public interest to see this play out. Now, that to me reeks of a lot of potential problems. And, if they can't beat Trump at the ballot box fair and square, they're going to go after him legally. And that's exactly what's behind this.
So,
there was a Democratic watchdog group behind this,
right,
as well as some Colorado voters.
in any of these indictments, are they going after him for insurrection?
What was that, Brian?
On these indictments they have against him right now, are they going after him for insurrection on any of the indictments?
Not yet.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
I think ultimately that's where they're going to try to,
They can try,
double back upon that for sure. If nothing else, they certainly want to tarnish any luster he might have.
right, but they haven't done it yet, and that's why I was saying that. And until you're convicted of something, he's not convicted. How are you going to say, okay, we're going to remove him from the ballot because we already determined he's guilty when he's not been proven guilty yet? Proven guilty, you know where I'm going with this. So basically,
and anything like that's going to hit the Supreme Court before he's actually removed him. And by the time that would happen, we're just over a year away.
Right.
And, any attorney that's worth his salt would have that delayed. And, and then next thing you know, the election's over. And one way or the other, he's either going to be the president-elect or he's not.
Right. And that's where they're breaking the law by even doing this. I mean, they think they can pull him off the ballot. They're breaking the law. They're breaking the Constitution of the United States. So you just can't do it.
Well, it certainly goes against the Constitution,
Absolutely.
But then there's also your state, election laws.
There is
and there certainly is some latitude there. And I don't know how that all shakes out ultimately, but you're probably right. This probably would end up in the Supreme Court before it's all said and done.
But it'll be so long before it gets there, and this thing's just not. They've tried in many other states already, a couple other states, and it didn't go. It didn't work.
No, it's been shot down every time.
Correct. So, and people are panicking.
But it makes headlines.
Go ahead, what?
It makes headlines, though.
Well, of course it does. Of course it does. And
and that's why they want it, because it makes headlines. And if it makes headlines, then it affects the voters. And, that's what they're going for, basically. Hey, let's make some headlines. Let's, and then that way, people will be like, oh my gosh, and,
But we see what's going on.
Some more mud on Trump.
Throw more on him, because his numbers keep getting higher every time they attack him. So bring it on.
Well, see, and that's kind of, that should be for lack of a better term, the proof in the pudding is, every time that they bring on one of these new things, that his poll numbers go up, and so I look at that and I'm kind of like, well, you know what? Every time you guys bring one of these things out, his numbers actually go up. So that means that it seems that people don't believe that. I shouldn't say they don't believe he is guilty, but they don't believe what you are saying he is guilty of.
Right.
Yeah, and I saw something today in the news, and I can't repeat all of the concrete facts, but the latest poll that came out, and this was Biden head-to-head with Trump in the presidential election, had them tied, I think, at 37% apiece.
What news source?
I don't remember. That's
a big problem. We got to find out that, because I don't listen to Fox News for their reporting on many things. I don't listen to CNN. I call them the cartoon news
this
network.
was actually in the. I want to say it was might have been in the local paper. I'm not 100% certain.
News and Observer.
Possibly.
They're a liberal. They're liberal.
We know.
Well, like most newspapers are.
Yeah, and just like WRALs, they're liberal stations.
But they're not the ones who did the poll. It was another organization that did the poll.
I know. But you could go to 5 different polls and see different numbers.
Organizations that do these pollings.
Right. And you could go to 5 different polls and see different numbers throughout those polls. It just depends.
No question.
Yeah, and that could be part of the problem.
On all those polls and in terms of who's asking the questions, how they ask them.
Oh, sure. And they're going to take the number that when you're a liberal station, newspaper, they're going to take the poll that suits them the best. And
it's like a CNN poll. Who are they going to ask?
Exactly. Exactly. The Cartoon News Network. I mean, I listen to Newsmax. That's probably the best channel I agree with to watch right now on TV. I do like them. They're getting better all the time. When they first came out, they weren't. Fox was always out there, and Fox, I mean, you watch them and they're really out there and they look great on TV. Now, finally, Newsmax is starting to get better. They look kind of generic at first, but hey, they were jumping into the game, and great for them. They're taking they're getting a lot of people on there now, and they're not.
I heard one of their ads the other day, and I know they're trying to position themselves as being an objective news source. Got to imagine that in this country.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to talk about, we're not going to talk about this tonight, but I do want to mention something. The next podcast I think I'm going to have is going to be about Mark Robinson. I'd like to talk about him and just go from there at that point. And because I'm hearing all kinds of different stuff from people out there. And, for example, I'm going to say one thing. I heard it a couple times. We hate him because he hates gay people. No, he's never said that. He has said he does not like LGBTQ, whatever that mess is, all those letters. But he talks about religion. He talks about he talks about man and woman. And that's what he talks about in the Bible, and it's there. And that is his belief. Just like I'll say it, I believe that a man and woman, should be married. That's fine. I have nothing against gay people. I'm going to tell you, it's just my opinion, guys. I've said this before, but again, nothing against gay people, but I don't believe in gay marriage. That's just me. And that's because of my Christian views. Now, want to say another thing. I've seen people going out there saying, well, he's all upset because, we're having parties and parades on the streets. And, well, yeah, I'm upset about it too. Jerry and I've talked about this because I don't want to see people running around there in front of children half naked, showing their butts. And we've seen it in these parades. You've seen it on TV where all the gays are doing that. Not all, but a lot of them. Let me rephrase that, people. But a lot of them are out there. Just like I don't want to see strippers out on the streets doing that either. I mean, there's a place for it. Go into a club if they're going to do that, and that's their choice, and that's fine. And I don't.
Somebody would go to jail if a female stripper did what these drag queens are doing.
Correct. And this is the problem. Yeah. And that's what Mark's talking about, and that's what he stands up for. And I'm right there with him on that. And I know Jerry
they're going to attack him on that. They're going to attack him on that. Then they're also going to attack him on the gun rights issue.
Of course. Well, that's a given because it's the Second Amendment. He talks about what the Second Amendment is truly for. He's not saying we need to go out there and do that, but he talks about what it's for. And Jerry's talked about that on this show as well. Jerry knows the Second Amendment quite well.
Yeah.
So
27 words.
Yeah, there you go. He knows. But we'll talk about Mark Robinson another night because Jerry and I actually had dinner with him a couple nights back. And got to sit with him for a while and talk with him. But we've talked with him before, and then we're going to be getting with him soon here again. And that's something we'll be talking about. But I'll tell you, these people have gone against him. I'm saying, oh, so where are you getting your sources at? Well, it's from the news. I'm hearing it. No, they're cutting off part of the speech is what they're doing. If you listen to everything he says, it might make sense. And I've asked these people, I said, instead of talking about it, why don't you come along? Not saying you could sit down and listen to what he actually says in person. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be around him. Well, then you're part of the problem because you don't want to hear the actual truth. You want to hear what some news source says or what some friend tells you, which we know how that one friend tells you another thing.
Brian, what you just said is one of the biggest problems in America now is people not hearing something in its entirety and taking it in its context. And I remember, a friend of my wife, we knew them in California, but her and her husband moved to North Carolina about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were at their house a couple of years ago, and the girls went to the store, and the husband and I were at home, and we were getting lunch ready. And I don't even remember how the conversation came up, but I said something about Trump, and he was like, "Oh my God, that guy's such a racist." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And he says, "I could never vote for him." I was like, and they're supposedly conservatives. And I said, "Well, then you didn't vote for him?" "Oh no, we could never vote for him." And, in the first election they did, in the second one they didn't. And I was like, "Why do you think he's a racist?" And they brought up the Charlottesville speech when he was talking about what happened in Charlottesville. And they said, he thinks that the KKK and the white supremacists are good people. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And then when he brought up the speech, I said, "Did you listen to that speech?"
Right.
He's like, "Of course not. I would never listen to Trump speak." And I'm like, "Well, then why do you feel qualified to comment on it?" Now, the only reason I go into that depth is that it's not just Trump that people do that with.
Right.
People do that with so many topics that are out there today. And, they, like you said, they get it from a friend, or they hear it from a biased news source, or, they see a portion of an article and don't read the whole thing.
Right.
And that's part of the problem. And I think that's one of the biggest problems in America today.
Correct.
Well, I felt somewhat qualified to speak about this because I did work in the broadcast industry a long time ago. And at one time, news organizations, broadcast organizations, had a responsibility to report both sides of the story as fairly and as honestly as possible. And that was called the Fairness Doctrine. That was done away with. I can't remember exactly what year, but it was either late 1970s, maybe 1980. They eliminated that rule, and it's been all downhill since.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it's funny because, going back to what you were just saying about that, that's where the old statement of "we report, you decide" came from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they would, "Hey, we're going to tell you the facts. We're going to tell you the truth. And then it's up to you what you think about it, or how you feel about it, or how you deal with it, or anything like that." And it's like, but hey, we report, you decide.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll be talking about Israel, what's going on with all that mess over there, and all these people protesting in our country. Which you guys out there, Hamas, you guys should leave the country. You guys are disgusting. I'll say it.
Well, Brian, real quick on that. Yesterday, I spent a few hours over in Jacksonville, North Carolina,
right,
at the Beirut Memorial, and it's the memorial that was erected for the 241 U.S. service members and 58 French paratroopers that were killed by a terrorist attack back in 1983. Yesterday was the 40th anniversary of that barracks bombing.
Okay.
And we actually had French representatives there. We had Italian representatives there. Commandant of the Marine Corps was there. The Secretary of the Navy. There was a big deal. There was a few thousand people. But what I go back to is I was in the Marine Corps at that time. I know people that were there. That's why I went. And back then, people in the military were asking us, or asking the government, I should say, to, "Hey, let's finish this. Let's get rid of Hezbollah, or they're going to be a problem in the future." That was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And yesterday, I'm standing there next to guys that were in that barracks that are missing a foot, missing an arm, stuff like that. And it's like, and I'm sitting there talking to these guys, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, we have failed these people. These poor guys went over there on a peacekeeping mission, got attacked by a terrorist group that has now attacked Israel and has possibly got us on the precipice of a global conflict.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I never realized how many Palestinians we had in this country. I never realized how many Muslims we had in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Well, more now with the border open.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very concerning. I mean, that's a national security risk right there. If you have people slipping in who intend to do us harm, and I'm not saying that everybody's a Palestinian or everybody who's a Muslim
no.
tends to do us harm, but there certainly are those groups, those factions out there.
Yeah.
And, right now we're not doing much of anything to stop them.
No, and that's why they've got warnings up here. And even in our own country, they're telling everybody now to look at your surroundings, make sure everything's fine. Just make sure you're, looking at everybody walking around you, things like that. I mean, we shouldn't have that in this country.
Right. I was thinking about this earlier today. I'm going to a football game this weekend, and I was thinking I'm bracing myself for some extra security risks or pat downs. It was fairly easy to walk into the stadium the last couple of times, but I suspect it's going to be a little bit harder to get through the gates.
Are you allowed to conceal and carry in that place?
Nope. No.
Jerry would know.
Not even off-duty police officers.
No, I didn't think so. So
my friend Don's a retired police officer, and when he was active, he was furious about most stadiums how they will not even allow an active police officer that's currently serving. We went to a hockey game over at PNC Arena one time, and I left my pistol in the car, but I forgot to take the magazine out of my pocket.
Yeah.
And so when I got to the front, I was like, oh, man. And Don showed his badge and said, hey, I'm a police officer. Can I just keep it in my pocket until the game's over? And they're like, nope, he can't come in with that. You can't come in with that. And he was an active police officer in the state of North Carolina, and it's like, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, no, concealed carry at a stadium, no. As a matter of fact, they'll confiscate a pocket knife if they catch you with it.
Right.
Yeah. And that's pretty bad when we can't, with all this going on, we can't protect ourselves. I mean, in certain places, let's just be honest. Yes, you can go into a nightclub, though, where they're serving alcohol and all, and you can conceal and carry. God knows what.
Yep.
Drunk will be in there sometime. But, I literally, I conceal and carry all the time now. And if there's a sign on the door, it says in a restaurant or anything, no guns allowed, then I'm not going to do business with that restaurant. And there's a reason why, because I've asked those people, well, are you going to be able to keep the bad guys out by putting that sign on the door? Well, I've had one person say, well, yeah, they're going to read it. Oh, so you're just telling me a bad guy's not going to break the law and bring it in here? Are you that stupid?
And they're also assuming that bad guys can all read.
Oh, that's the other thing. They don't care about
or that they're going to follow procedure.
Right.
Well, Greg, Brian and I have had this conversation before, and I know that you may have had it with Brian, but I remember visiting one of my clients in another state one time, and there was a new managing partner there, and I knew him from another place. And so he's like, hey, you've been coming up here for a while before I came here, so give me the lay of the land, tell me what you think. And so the previous managing partner had a no guns sticker on the entrance door of all entrances. And so I told this guy, and the new guy is a big Second Amendment guy, big hunter, everything like that. And I pointed out those stickers. I said, first thing I would do is get rid of those. And I said, let me tell you why. I said, first off, no criminal is going to look at that and abide by it. They're not going to say, oh, man, I better go back and put it in my car.
I'm going to say, I've got the advantage.
Exactly. And the law-abiding citizens, you've now created a criminal if they don't go put it in their car, or they will and create a victim of themselves. But I said, look, here's the deal. Nobody's going to walk up and see that sign on the door and say, thank goodness they have that sign. I'm going to do business here. I said, but I will promise you that somebody will walk up, see that sign and walk out and never tell you why they left without doing business here.
Yep.
I said, so if you want to cost yourself business, I said, by all means, keep those signs. And he was like, wow, I never thought about it that way. And I was like, well, you need to.
Yeah, well, it's just like I spoke to somebody not long ago who was a conservative of all things and explained the whole thing. If someone breaks in your house, she's going, well, why not just shoot him in the leg? And I explained, well, if that criminal falls and they have a gun and all of a sudden you got your family in the house and they're holding that gun under their chest and all of a sudden they turn around and start shooting people in the house, such as your family, because you shot them in the leg and they're like a wounded animal, well, does that make any sense? And she goes, I never thought about it.
They're still around to tell a lie about what actually happened.
That's the other thing.
Or sue you.
True. Oh, yeah. Yeah, well. So, but there are, hopefully none of us ever have to see or deal with that. I pray.
I agree.
I never want to deal with that because I would feel terrible even shooting a bad guy. Jerry and I may have different views, but I wouldn't want to shoot
one
anybody.
promise I will make you is my bad guy will not be in court.
That's true, but mine, I'm just going to say, I would feel, oh no, mine won't be either, most likely, but I mean, I'm not going to want to ever do that. I'm a human being, but
who wants to go?
If I shoot somebody in the leg, it's because I tripped and I misfired.
Oh, hey man, isn't that Barney Pfeiffer carrying the one bullet in his gun?
Yeah. Center mass.
Oh, really? All right, guys, guess what? As always, we went over a little bit by 5 minutes. This could go on. Now, Greg just realized that we could go on all night with this, and we have done that. And we're just going to make this. We really wanted to just talk about the House tonight and what's going on and how long this is going to take. And right now,
like I said, they just need to not air their laundry in public. They need to do this behind closed doors.
Right. Do it quickly.
And they need to show up on the House floor and in a concerted effort say, this is our guy. We're all behind him.
Yep.
And, here's your new speaker.
That's correct. Yep. All right, guys. We're going to end this. Jerry, you have anything else to say?
Nope. That was pretty much it.
Greg, what about you?
No, thanks for having me on the program tonight. I've enjoyed it.
All right, I'm going to tell everybody out there, if you want, go ahead and go to my website, I'll do that for a reason, just-markcommonsense.com. That'll get you in my webpage. You can scroll to the bottom. You can join my YouTube channel. You can join my podcast. I am all over the country, obviously. And that being said, that I do want to thank our law enforcement for everything you guys do out there. I also want to thank our first responders for everything you guys do out there. Also, our military right now, especially overseas, with what's going on right now. We are on the brink because of Joe Biden. That's one part of it. But also want to thank our truck drivers and our farmers for everything you guys do. And as always, God bless you. God bless America. And thanks for listening. And have a great night and take care. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.